Alright, how's it going everyone? Gamma Fighter here, coming at you with another Sylvaneth video, and in this video we're going to be doing our updated Sylvaneth tier list for all the different units that we have available to us. What we're looking at right now is our version 2 of the tier list, so this was a little while after the version, or 4th edition had launched. There were a couple updates and things like that. I went ahead and updated it, and but now we're getting to the end of the season. I thought it would be a good idea to recap where we're at just before the end of the season. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming changes for the new GHB, and speculating on what might happen and what changes we might receive and how things might be easier or harder for us and stuff like that. I think that's going to be a separate video after this one. It was kind of holding me back from making the video, and I know it's been a while since I uploaded, so I want to go ahead and get into this one. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into it right here in the order that we have them here. Let's start with belthanos. So belthanos is still list defining, super powerful unit. Probably arguably the best hero in the faction. The run and charge that he can give to up to 3 units per turn without a limit on the distance, very powerful, and it helps us to overcome our one weakness, our biggest weakness, I should say. We're pretty rounded as a faction. As far as like our units are pretty durable, our units can do pretty good damage. We're not super strong in either direction really, and we have pretty good magic casting, stuff like that. But the biggest thing that our weakness is going to be our mobility. When we're talking about kurnoth hunters, we're talking about treelords and things like that. Mobility is a big weakness. So belthanos helps us to overcome that and helps us to be more aggressive, and that is really necessary, I'd say, for Sylvaneth. So he's going to stay right here in list defining. Next is alarielle. She's also going to stay in list defining. So on a 4-up, she can bring a unit back at half strength that has died. Do it in your movement phase. And so on average, you're getting about 4 chances to do this, and it's happening about 50% of the time. So you're getting about 2 units back at half strength. That really is very powerful. It can be sometimes swingy because you're just doing these coin flips, and sometimes they all go your way, sometimes none of them go your way, that kind of thing. It's not my favorite feature, but you can't really deny how powerful it is. In her own right, she's quite durable. She's got good healing. She's got good spell casting. She's got good mobility. Kinda. She's got a big old pie plate, as I like to say, of a base, and so it can be hard to fit her in places, but she's got a long fly move, so that makes it a little bit better. So she's really, really powerful as well, and that's why for most of this edition, we have seen belthanos run with alarielle, arguably the best or the second best unit thing that you can bring in Sylvaneth, and together they are very powerful. So alarielle staying right here in list defining. Okay, now we're getting into Warsong Revenant. This is going to be going down. I'm going to put Warsong Revenant into the best option for a good roll. Warsong Revenant's really strong. It actually did go down in points, which is great. It didn't need to. It was already pretty strong. But it is, a mostly solid anti-wizard wizard, which is cool. Only 200 points, and it has 2 casts, which is really great as a wizard. It gives 6-up ward aura around it to allied units that are within range, which is great. And on the other side, it actually reduces the ward of enemies that are in range as well. So that's a really powerful, rare effect, and certainly not available anywhere else in Sylvaneth. So I really like the Warsong Revenant. I have seen it even being brought in these lists with alarielle and belthanos, and bringing another wizard here with the Warsong Revenant. So it's not just that I like it, but people are using it quite successfully as well in the competitive scene too. And I should say too, I'm not a competitive player. So this is just some guy on the internet. So yeah, don't take this as gospel. The other thing is this season's winding down, coming to an end here soon too. So it's not like, if you're just starting the army, then this is not really a good way to go off of this tier list as far as like your purchases and things like that, because by the time you're done painting, things will probably have changed quite a bit with the new season coming up. So just my little disclaimer that I like to give here so people don't get the wrong idea. But moving on, and yeah, you can disagree with me. I'm just a guy. Moving on, kurnoth hunters with great swords. This is staying in the best option for a good roll. These are arguably our best hammer, my favorite hammer that we have. They do great damage. They have crit mortals. They are our best raw damage that we have in the whole army against a 3-up save or better. And they're very powerful. Yeah, they do a lot of damage. They overcome a lot of enemy strengths, like kind of thing. Yeah, the biggest thing is that they're really slow, and so if you bring them with belthanos, it makes them very strong. They get a 6-up ward when they're contesting an objective, which is nice. They have a 4-up save only, but 5 health each, is very nice. Like I said, quite well rounded. There are units that do more damage in the game. There are units that are more durable in the game, but it's nice that we have this package that's quite well rounded, quite durable, pretty good damage. Biggest weakness being the mobility. Of course, we have teleporting in Sylvaneth to overcome that, as well as I said before, belthanos. So very nice. Okay, for the Spite Rider Lancers, I'm going to move these down to okay but situational. So I really liked the Spite Rider Lancers, but I think I just overrate their mobility and the strike first ability. When they charge on a 4-up, they can get strike first, which is, I think, really powerful. And it is one of our few ways of kind of doing that kind of initiative tricks here in our army. And I think that they're one of the better ones. Compared to like the kurnoth hunters with greatswords, you do get a bit of a damage drop off, but not much. Although that's only when they charge. They get +1 damage on the charge. So if you're not charging, your damage is just completely neutered, and so that's not great. But then on the other hand, they have a really good movement characteristic. They can fly. If you bring them with belthanos as well, then it's going to be pretty hard for them to get caught flat-footed and not charging, but that does happen too. But there's also strike and fade too, so I don't know. I really haven't seen these used much in competitive play and seeing a lot of success with them or anything like that. I think that they are, yeah, what I said now. I think they're just okay but situational, and the reason I had them in the best option is because I really thought of them as like an alternative to bringing kurnoth hunters. You could bring something that does a little bit less damage, but they have a bit more mobility. But that just ended up not being how people play them. All right, then going with the, let me see here. Just checking my notes here to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, yeah. As far as the Spite Rider Lancers, they are pretty similar to the kurnoth hunters. That's why I kind of thought of them the same way. They have the same defensive profile. They just don't have the wards on objectives. But they do have a healing for 3 at the end of every turn. And then when you add in the Sylvaneth healing when you're near Awakened Wildwoods, they can basically, if they don't completely kill a model, then they're going to be healed up to full as long as you're near Awakened Wildwoods, which is really strong. Yeah, pretty good, but just not good enough, I think. So then for the kurnoth hunters with great bows, I'm going to leave these guys in the best option for a good roll. For me, I'm just not particularly impressed by their damage, and I think that they do tend to be a bit too swingy for my personal taste, but people have had a lot of success with them. They're very good against heroes, and especially if there's like foot heroes around that don't have a ton of wounds, a ton of health, and they're not super durable, then the kurnoth hunters are a big threat to them. They're doing their damage at pretty good range, and so they are pretty good for controlling the battlefield. Yeah, I'm not going to get into why I don't like them. Their damage is good for shooting, though, and in our army, you sacrifice a little bit because they are so durable compared to most shooting units in the game. So they sacrifice a little bit of that damage for the durability, and generally you don't want to use the durability, so that's the kind of thing. But you can do things with like teleporting, with strike and fade, and standing in Awakened Wildwoods that have obscuring and that kind of thing. So you can do a lot of tricks with them. They are very good for our army, and I think, like I said, I think they're the best option for range damage that we have. They're really the only contestant for it. The only other arguable contestant for range damage is going to be our Gossamed Archers, which is our next unit here. I'm going to leave these guys in best option for a good roll. You would never really bring these, you would never want to like competitively bring these in a reinforced unit with the purpose of trying to do as much damage as possible. These guys are highly mobile, They're great at getting around, grabbing objectives, completing battle tactics for you, and on top of that, they have a little bit of shooting and they have a little bit of movement shenanigans, so you can kind of get them out of tough spots sometimes with the movement shenanigans that you can do. So they are a very good unit for the role of this objective monkey kind of a thing, and on top of that, they can get a little bit more damage on top of that. The other main objective monkey that we have is going to be the tree revenants, but unfortunately I'm going to move these down to okay but situational. Now, I don't think the tree revenants have changed all that much. This is more based on the usage that people have. Being able to bring gossamet archers, which can do the same role, but also be able to do a little bit of chip damage and help out in that area, is just more helpful, I think, and that's why people have been using the gossamet archers mostly. I've seen a lot of bringing 2 gossamet archers or bringing just 1 unit of gossamet archers and not having a second objective monkey unit. My preference would probably be to bring the tree revenants, 1 unit of tree revenants, 1 unit of gossamet archers. That way you kind of get the best of both worlds. And speaking of that, the tree revenants, the thing that they have on the gossamet archers is that they have a universal teleport as long as they end the teleport outside of 9 inches of an enemy. That's really very good if you're making mistakes, or if I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's very forgiving. So you can cap objectives from anywhere. You can make up for lost time or bad positioning by using the teleport ability with a lot of things. There are some things where like a battle tactic where you can't set up in order to complete it. Like, the unit must not have been set up that turn. And in that case, the tree revenants can't bail you out there, but in other ways they can. So things like maybe if it was a unit of gossamet archers instead, they would still be out of range to be able to take their lands and like capture a what's it called? I totally forgot what it's called. Terrain feature. There we go. Capture a terrain feature in the enemy territory. The gossamet archers might not be able to make it, but with the universal teleport, the tree revenants would be able to make it. But on the other hand, I think one of the reasons we don't see that as much in the top high-end play is because the top players are being able to set up. They know what they're going to be doing in the next turn, or they have plans for what they're going to be doing in the next turn. They're like, if they know that they have take their lands available, they're making sure that they're putting their gossamet archers in a good position, if it's safe to do so, where they can capitalize on that if the opportunity comes up to take it, that type of thing. Whereas maybe for the lower end of play, the tree revenants are a better option because it's a little bit more forgiving, if that makes sense there. Still like them, but bumping them down to okay but situational. For Spirit of Durthu, I'm leaving them in the best choice for a good roll. Spirit of Durthu is really solid on durability. It's a big treelord, 14 health on a 3-up save. Very good as far as durability and defense for the points cost, even though he does cost quite a bit more than the other tree lords. Now, his damage is a little bit swingy, but a lot of times you can set it up so that you're hitting on 2s and 2s, and you've got 2 rend. So it can be reliable in theory, but then, there's times where you'll be rolling a couple of 1s in there and you're going to be upset. It's only 4 attacks, that's the thing, before you get bracketed. So, but it is 5 damage too. So like I said, it can be a bit swingy, but it is really cool damage. It's nice to be able to hit for 5, really just destroy stuff. Very fun. But yeah, solid durability, solid damage. The Spirit of Durthu does have a bit of a specialty, though, with targeting monsters. So the Rampage lowers the number of attacks for the monster, I believe, by 1 if the Rampage succeeds. And then he gets +1 rend against monsters, which is really great if you've got like a high durability, like a good armor save monster. You get up to 3 rend, and you're really just slicing through that really good. So that, just to mention, he's got a little bit of a specialty, but even if the enemy doesn't have any monsters, he's very good, a good solid option, very well-rounded. Once again, the big weakness being his low speed, but you can kind of get around that in other ways, that type of thing. All right, next moving on to the Lady of Vines. I'm going to be moving her down very sadly to okay but situational. move her to the top because I like her so much. This is my favorite hero, if you guys are just joining. Actually, part of why I haven't been uploading lately, I got the Lady of Vines, and I have been working on her. I spent like 2 weeks just working on her with like all the free time I ever had. I was pretty busy, but I spent those 2 weeks, and yeah, so she is looking awesome. Hope to be able to share that with you guys sometime. But getting back to the tier list, I'm actually, this is actually a little tough too, even though I am putting her at the top. She may even be niche unit, niche hero right now, because it's tough. It's just a tough place to be in, and that may truly be where she is. But let's talk it through. She sounds super good on paper. She sounds really good. She counts as a tree. Oh, she just has too many downsides. So let's go through it. She's a 2-cast wizard. She counts as a tree for the faction abilities. She's got a 5-up ward aura spell, so kind of like the Warsong Revenants ward aura that's on a 6-up ward. She can cast a spell that gives her a 5-up ward aura, which is really, really strong, especially with, like kurnoth hunters or with the Spirit of Durthu or treelords that are really durable, or, alarielle too, if she could, fit in there. The 5-up ward just gives them so much durability that it's crazy. And I really like that style of play. She's got pretty good damage for a hero at her points cost. She's got a really good rampage, which is on a 2-up only, and the enemy gets -1 to hit. Whatever target that they want to hit, they're -1 to hit them. Or you can make it so that that enemy is -1 to be hit. Or sorry, +1 to be hit, making it easier for your guys to do damage, which is a really cool ability. But also it's very strong. Only problem being she has to be in combat. But so there we get to the downsides. She's a monster, and that makes her susceptible to shooting. So you generally kind of have to hide her away if the enemy has any shooting. And she also only has 8 health. So even with her ward up, she is really fragile in the current state of the game. So it's just too risky to bring her. Yeah, it's just too difficult. So I really like her, but she really is at best okay, but situational. And I think maybe truly could be a niche, but I'm not going to do that to my girl. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. No, oh yeah, I was just having nostalgia when I was making this tier list, thinking about in 3rd edition when not everything had a 3-inch attack range. That was actually pretty rare, and she had a 3-inch attack range. I don't even think it was all of her attacks. I think it was just one profile. It's been a while, but you could have the dryads in front of her. She counted as a awakened wildwood for the dryads, so they were -1 to hit, -1 to wound, or to be hit and to be wounded. You'd have the ward aura up, so even any damage that got through, they'd be warding it off, and then she would be hitting over the top of them, and the enemy couldn't hit her because she had this 3-inch attack range. The enemy would have like a 1 or 2-inch attack range, and that was really cool. Those were good times, but no more. But moving on, looking at the next unit here, and we're on to the kurnoth hunters with scythes. These guys are going to stay in the okay but situational. I still think, when we're doing this kind of option for a good roll kind of a thing, and when we're grading these guys, we're grading them based on how are they sort of meant to be used, how are they being used, and of course, a really good direct comparison for the kurnoth hunters with scythes is the kurnoth hunters with great swords, and the scythes are like the definition of okay but situational. In fact, I'm just gonna move her. I'm just gonna move the Lady of Vines. It breaks my heart. I have to move her down to niche, just even thinking about her compared to the kurnoth hunters with scythes, and just like the disparity of how good she is compared to, or how good the scythes are compared to the swords. Like, it's pretty close. So it kind of doesn't make sense to have the Lady of Vines in okay but situational. So she's down in niche. There we go. But the scythes, going back to them, these are just a little bit weaker in offensive situations. They're just a little bit weaker than the great swords. They're actually better, though, if you are the one getting charged. So they are like the more defensive option. The problem is you don't want to be getting charged, right? It's not like they're super durable or anything like that. They're okay durability, but it's not like they're like a true anvil or anything where they can accept charges and that kind of thing. So it's, from that perspective, that's why I'd say the great swords are better, because they're better on offense, and it's a hammer unit. You want hammer units to be offensive. There you go. But these do have a good use where that's situational. It's not niche, it's situational, where these can be used more defensively. Particularly, we've seen it used a lot where you, instead of bringing a reinforced unit of bows with alarielle, you bring the reinforced unit of scythes. You give them the bodyguard honor guard ability that reduces the enemy attacks by 1 when some certain circumstances someone's got to charge, someone's got to make sure they don't charge, stuff like that. But on the defensive, when they're near alarielle, then the enemy gets -1 to their attack characteristic, which is really strong. And in that case, then it's okay that you're a little more defensive because you got this other supplemental defensive ability to go along with it. And they deal mortals when they get charged. They get +1 to rend when they get charged, and then they end up doing quite a bit. They do a little bit more damage than the kurnoth swords when the kurnoth swords charge as a comparison. The only downside is then you're the one getting attacked first, so that kind of puts the enemy in a bad situation too, which is nice. They either have to attack alarielle, in which case your scythes are going to be at full health to be able to swing back, or they attack into the sides, and then alarielle is totally defended, which is what you're trying to do with these bodyguard units, right? So I do like that aspect as well. Very, very close comparison, but I think if we're going to say best option stays with the swords, and these sides have to go down just a little bit in the okay but situational. Moving on to Revenant Seekers here, we're going to drop these down right into needs a buff. I feel like I've seen these one time in a competitive list in a tournament, just looking online. And I think that may have just been the only time. I could be imagining it, though. It could have been like Spite Revenants or something. I just read it as Revenant Seekers. These need a buff because they are 200 points. They're priced like a strong cavalry unit, which is what they're sort of meant to be, but they kind of toe the line between being a cavalry unit and a support unit. And for a support unit, for what they do, the utility that they bring, it's really, really, I'd say, negligible and not anywhere close to 200 points as a utility unit. But they sacrifice a ton of their damage compared to the Spite Rider Lancers. They sacrifice a lot of damage to gain that utility, and it just doesn't make sense. So for when it comes to damage, they're bad. When it comes to utility, negligible. It's just you get 3 extra dice on a rally when you're within 12 inches of them. That's just not good enough. I speculated early on in the edition that this could help with, say, alarielle. You're going to be maybe using rally on her quite a bit as a central anvil, and this could be a way to keep her alive. I think people may have experimented with that early on, and it just wasn't really worth it. I also speculated I forget the exact numbers on it, but I feel like it was like you had a 50-50 shot of bringing a Spite Rider Lancer back on a rally if you had like the banner, the musician, or whatever it was, and the Revenant Seekers nearby. So I was sort of speculating and I think this is how GW wanted us to play with them, that you would run like a reinforced unit of Spite Rider Lancers, and they'd have like an escort of these Revenant Seekers that would be around within 12 inches to be able to give that rally roll bonus, but then the Revenant Seeker would be like capping objectives, maybe bullying some chaff, that kind of a thing. And theoretically, that's, that's cool. But I still don't think it's good enough. I just don't think it's worth 200 points. Maybe that's like a super power pair that no one even tried, but I really doubt that. I just don't think so. I think Revenant Seekers really need a buff to be relevant going forward. That's the other thing, and why I wanted to tie this in with the wrapping up the new GHB, or the old GHB, and looking towards the new season, was that I wanted to speculate about what could they do, what kind of objectives could they change, or not objectives, but battle tactics could they change, and that type of stuff, where this ability from Revenant Seekers could be good. And that's why I was having such a hard time coming up with anything, is because I really don't know if there's anything that they could do to make the Revenant Seekers better. I think they just need to change quite a bit. The other thing I would want to talk about, maybe, like I said, next video, is what are some changes. They're doing alternate war scrolls for a few units in each faction that need a little bit of help. Spite Rider Lancers Revenant Seekers are a good candidate for that. So maybe I'll speculate on that in the next video if they don't release Sylvaneth by that time. Okay, moving forward, a lot of talk on Spite Rider Lancers and Revenant Seekers. Moving on to the Treelord Ancient. We're going to leave Treelord Ancient in okay but situational. This thing at the beginning, it was 360 points, and now it is 220 points. That is a massive points drop off. So they've gotten to the point where the Treelord Ancient, and the Treelord Ancient is really close in points now to the Treelord, whereas before it was a lot higher. So it didn't make that much sense. They're pretty comparable. You don't give up that much ability to lose the I'm losing my words here. In order to gain the Wizard 1, you lose a little bit of power, and you're not getting that much benefit, is what I'm saying, but by getting the Wizard 1 compared to the Treelord. So they are very close comparisons, and now they're very close in points, and so I think they deserve to stay in okay but situational. So the Treelord Ancient has actually a really good rampage on a 4-up. The enemy gets strikes first. Now, third edition feels so long ago. You know, when you remember all these new rules and everything like that, it gets so hard to remember the old ones. At least for me, that's how I am. I feel like all the Treelords had, on a 4-up, the enemy gets strike last as a rampage in third edition, and that was why I loved all the Treelords. That was part of what made durthu super good, if I'm remembering correctly. I know they all had the universal teleport, which was awesome, on their war scroll. But I feel like at least the Treelord and the Treelord Ancient had the Fight's Last Stomp, which was just incredible. So the Treelord Ancient retains the Fight Last Stomp. This is another way we can mess around with shenanigans. It's very strong. Which reminds me, the branchwych isn't on here. I forgot about that. We'll talk about the branchwych at the end if I remember. So that the Fight's Last Rampage is very, very good. And, you know, it only goes off on a 4-up, but it is very nice to use that defensively and everything. That's great. The damage is pretty low, but like I said, it's a bit of a trade-off. The Treelord Ancient has casting, so you can cast a damage spell, and I did a deep dive into our magic and kind of what the average damage that you can expect to do by casting a spell. So you can watch that video if you want to see more, but that's one way that it kind of makes up for the lack of damage compared to other units. So yeah, the biggest problem is actually that it's a monster that's a single model, so it can't be reinforced. So the sort of maximum damage and the maximum durability it can have is capped out pretty low, but it's pretty good. You know, you can think of it as an anvil with some pretty good utility. And as I said before, we don't have the best durability in the whole game, but as far as our faction goes, this is a really good option for a durable sort of anvil type of a unit. So there we go. Moving on, the Treelord's also going to stay in okay but situational. This is a little bit cheaper than Treelord Ancient even. It's got a good rampage, -1 to the enemy's wound. Wound roll? Yeah. So that's pretty good. This is the only unit that we have that can benefit from Prized Beast. And actually, now that the points on this thing are so low, with Prized Beast, it gets +1 to hit, and it can't be bracketed, and its damage is actually pretty efficient for how many points you have to spend on it, which is actually pretty cool. Again, this is more of an anvil type of a unit, but with that Prized Beast ability, you can actually put out quite a surprising amount of damage compared to its pretty low points cost. Moving on, and speaking of anvil units, we're going to look at our favorite tar pit here, the Dryads. Dryads are actually going down into niche here. It is a very decent tar pit unit. For just like 100 points, it gets that -1 to be hit, -1 to be wounded near Awakened Wildwoods, which is great. The problem is that that's all it does. All it does is screen, all it does is be chaff, and in this current iteration of the game, that's really just not working. So the way that 4th edition's been set up, you know, combined with like the rules for this GHB, it just hasn't worked. I think the big thing is the 3-inch attack range, as I talked about earlier. With everything having a 3-inch attack range, the chaff is just not as useful. So the role is the problem. It's not that dryads are bad necessarily per se. It's that the role that they fill is kind of bad in niche in this edition. So they're staying down here in niche. All right, the Arch Revenant, I'm going to drop her down into needs a buff. Basically, this thing is just a piece of paper that can fly. And the utility that it has is completely negligible. Gets +1 to wound rolls on Kurnoth Hunters. Kurnoth Hunters are already wounding on 3s, on their melee attacks, their combat attacks. They're already wounding on 3s, so going from 3 to 2 is the smallest improvement that you can get in the game. And so it's, relative to, like, the accuracy it's improved by the least amount possible, so it's really quite negligible. I think it's still like 130 points. I never see anyone bring it anymore, so that's why, like, I'm not sure exactly how much it costs. I think 130. The one thing is, I did a video on the Evergreen Hunt, and some people pointed out that it's useful for capping objectives in the Evergreen Hunt because you're so limited on what units you can bring. So you're not bringing stuff like the tree revenants or anything to capture objectives. So in that army, and then also it's the only other hero other than Belthanos that can go in Evergreen Hunt, and so it's the only unit that can get a artifact and a heroic trait. So it's the only way to get those. So you're totally missing out on those enhancement to your army if you don't bring the Arch Revenant. So that's one reason. But the problem is, like, Evergreen Hunt's not that good. It's not meta right now. So being like niche in that one non-meta regiment or army of renown means that I'm just going to drop it into needs a buff. They got to give her something else. She would be another great candidate for them to do an alternate war scroll for. Okay, next, moving on to the Twist Wield. Twist Wield's actually going to stay in niche. I really haven't seen it anywhere, but I'm going to keep it here in niche because it is quite efficient. As far as the pricing of points, it's quite efficient in terms of damage and durability. It just has the downside of that, like, the maximum durability and the maximum damage that it can do is not very good, but for how cheap they are in terms of points cost, it is good relative. So that's pretty good. Like, there is a niche role for that. There's theoretically a world where you have the Forest Folk faction or sub-faction that lets you get like +1 rend on charge with these types of units, and you could do like a horde version of the army. But I just think other units or other factions do that better than us. I don't think we really have the tools to be able to play like a horde army, and I don't think anyone's going to want to buy like 3 or 4 of these Warcry Warbands boxes. That's like, niche at best. This is pretty generous rating to put them in niche, so I don't think you'd want to do that necessarily. Okay, moving on. The Spite Revenants, these are actually, I'm moving these all the way up to okay, but situational. Okay, I actually did I don't even know if it was a whole video or if it was at the end of a tier list or something. I did a pretty deep dive onto what the problem with Spite Revenants is, and we'll talk about that here. The problem is they were priced like Kurnoth Hunters with great swords. What I mean is a reinforced unit of Spite Revenants costs the same as a non-reinforced unit of Kurnoth Greatswords, and they both have crit mortals. The problem is that in every other way, the Kurnoth Greatswords were so much better. But now, so watch that video. If I don't even know which video it is, but watch that video if you want to know more. Just watch all of my videos. That's how you find it. Now they got the points reduction that they needed, and so now they are cheaper than a non-reinforced unit of Kurnoth Greatswords, and they're a lot more efficient now as a result. So it's not as easy of a direct comparison. They cost 60 points less than a non-reinforced unit of Greatswords. So even though they're not as strong as a non-reinforced unit of Greatswords, they are cheaper, which is great. So there's going to be some times where you have like 80 points left in a list, or you have 160 points left in a list, and they're a pretty decent option. They can do some pretty good damage, and you won't be like all torn up if if they die. And speaking, I was talking about 3rd edition earlier. This is the role that they played in 3rd edition too. I liked them quite a bit in 3rd edition because if I had like a little space in my list, I could add this extra like mini hammer in there where they're not going to be taking on the strongest things ever, but they have those crit mortals that let them be able to cleave through some of that tough armor and get some surprisingly good damage in for how cheap they are. These are, I forget if I think the Spite Revenants now are the most efficient like damaging units in our army now. I think the Twist Wield are like right behind them. But for the points cost, they are punching above their weight class, is what I like to say. And there's a space for that. And so when I say situational, basically I mean if you have exactly 160 points left in your list, they're not a bad option rather than trying to rearrange your whole list to figure it out. All right, for Drycha, I am going to move her up as well, but only to niche. She's still bad, which is I don't like. But now she's gone down in points quite a bit, and so she's cheap enough to be worth considering in a casual list, probably not in a competitive list. Okay. Pardon me one moment. So her damage still is not very good, but with her points dropping so much, it is actually starting to be efficient. So that's something. And then actually, she has bonus damage or bonus rend against infantry. So she's actually pretty solidly efficient against infantry. And there is a lot of infantry in the game. So that is actually pretty good. She has a huge volume of attacks, which is something I was thinking about making a video on, but there wasn't really enough material on it to cover a whole video. But basically, there is some merit to having just like a good volume of attacks that you can throw out there for consistency and that type of a thing. And so she has that, and she has it in both ranged and in melee. Now, they're pretty low quality attacks. Most of her attacks are hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, which is pretty bad. But she does have a couple of high quality attacks as well. I think it's something like 37 attacks, if I remember right, 35 maybe. So quite a lot of attacks. So yeah, and she's Wizard 1 as well. So that's a nice little bonus on top of that. Maybe get a little bit more damage, a little bit of utility, something like that. The problem with her is her abilities are too niche. Just like her War Scroll spell, her Rampage, just very, very niche. And then she's also a monster, so she is like not as durable as the like treelords. So she kind of suffers from what the Lady of Vines has, is being susceptible to shooting and being vulnerable to that kind of stuff. So not great, but like I said, her points are getting low enough that she is like, if you're not trying to win a tournament, then she's worth bringing just to try her out. And yeah, she's not totally worthless at this point anymore. Okay, so that's it. Oh, and I remembered the branchwych. So the branchwych, I don't have any notes on, so I'm going off the top of my head. But she is a one-cast wizard, and her big thing is that she can give, if the enemy charges you during their turn, then she can, on a roll, a 3-up or a 4-up, I think, she can give one of your units strike first. So that's another way that we can mess with initiative. Plus, as a bonus, she's like a one-cast wizard. I think she's like 110 points maybe. And if you consider Wizard 1 to be worth about 100 points, then that's not terrible. She's a Wizard 1 with like a little bit of an upside. Damage is terrible, durability is terrible, movement's terrible. So she's got that trick where she can give you strike first. I think that puts her into niche or needs a buff. The problem is she's just not doing enough. She's a fun little trick that you can put into your army if you have the space to be able to do it. But that's about it. I think I'd say niche for her. I think that's a fine one. So this is our current tier list as it stands, going towards the end of the season, the end of the GHB. What do you guys think about this? And let me know if I got any of this wrong, or if you what you think as far as like if there's anything that you've been using that I talked about that I just haven't been seeing, like the Warcry Warband or something, and you have some experience with that, go ahead and share that in the comments down below. Maybe give some people ideas for new ways that they can use some of the units that they've already built and painted and everything like that. As for me, just at the end of the video, for the real ones who are sticking around, like I said, I've been pretty busy. It's a really busy month. April was really busy for me, and I spent most of my free time painting and stuff like that. So I am getting close. I visited another local store and checked them out, and they seem really chill about playing Sigmar and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to being able to play with them soon. Just have a little bit more finishing touches to put on my army. Maybe I can share that with you guys. And I'm hoping to be able to do some like Andy 2D6 kind of game recaps for you guys. Maybe even do a live stream like he does. And that way I'll be able to grow as a player and be able to share more insights and have a more informed insight. As I shared earlier in the video, and if you guys are sticking around, you probably know this already, I'm not like a pro player or anything like that. I got into Sigmar for the painting and the hobbying aspect. I just really like the models. But as I'm getting closer to like completing this version of the army, I really want to play it in person and be able to make some friends and stuff like that. And then if I can grow as a player, then I can share some of that stuff with you guys, and I think that'd be really fun. So that's it for me. Really appreciate you guys sticking around. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, smash the like button, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.